Finding the greatest movies of all time is much easier than finding the greatest books of all time. The reason is simple. The history of cinema is only 100 years old at this point. The first Academy Awards was held in 1929. Wings won the first Best Picture, by the way. There are still far too many movies for you to be able to watch them all in your lifetime. But you can waste more time on bad movies than on bad books. You can take more risks. But why not watch the best of the best if you can? Tarantino and Scorsese are right when they say we are living in the worst era of cinema. The vast majority of films made since 2020 and the latest show or film on Netflix or Hulu are almost certainly blasphemous trash. Allow me then to guide you through the maze of 100 years of cinema to what is truly excellent and praiseworthy. I love reading all the top lists for the best films, like I love reading the best books lists. But for movies, the list can be divided into two categories, the critics and the popular audience. You can easily see the top lists of the critics in the history of nominations and winners of Best Picture at the Academy Awards, which includes monstrosities like Shakespeare in Love and The Shape of Water. For the popular audience picks, check out the top 250 Internet Movie Database rated films of all time. It has almost 100 million users. I am much more on the side of them than the critics. In fact, we agree on the greatest film ever made. This has even become a meme for whether a movie is good or not. If the critics love it and the popular audience hates it, it's probably terrible. But if the critics hate it and the popular audience loves it, it's almost certainly a masterpiece. Dave Chappelle's comedy specials are premier examples of this. The movie Sound of Freedom and Mario Brothers and the documentaries on Fauci and Hillary illustrate this divergence well. Would somebody please watch Fauci? But there's a third option where both the critics and the popular audience love it. When this happens, they will almost certainly be some of the greatest films of all time. Two classic examples are Braveheart, Best Picture of 1995, and Gladiator, Best Picture of 2000. They are both on my list of the greatest films ever made. Before I give you the full list, let me first tell you about the greatest trilogy of all time. These three films were made 20 to 30 years apart. They were not meant to be a trilogy, but they are the three best movies ever made on the Lord Jesus Christ. My ultimate criteria for the greatest films is, do they inspire me, move me, challenge me, help me better to enjoy and endure life? By that criteria, the films that portray Christ well would have to be the most excellent and praiseworthy. They are Ben-Hur from 1959, Jesus of Nazareth from 1977, and, of course, The Passion of the Christ from 2004. Ben-Hur is based on the novel by Lewis Wallace, who was inspired to write it after a conversation with the famous atheist of his time, Colonel Ingersoll. The brilliance of this film is Christ never speaks, and you never see his face. It is filled with awe-inspiring scenes throughout that will take your breath away. Jesus of Nazareth is Franco Zeffirelli's masterpiece, almost 6 hours of glory. If you watch it straight through, you feel like you've spent the day with Jesus Christ. And The Passion of the Christ from Mel Gibson. Adjusting for inflation, it is still the highest-grossing R-rated film of all time. Jesus is Lord even of the R-rated market, in case you didn't know. I took multiple groups of people to see this when it came out, and every time at the end, the theater was completely silent. Nobody said a word. The Passion is the only film that has ever produced such an awe-inducing silence from its audience. I'm not a prophet or a son of a prophet, but I will prophesy that Mel Gibson's sequel, The Resurrection of the Christ, coming out hopefully very soon, will be added to this list as the fourth greatest film, if not the greatest of them all, on Jesus Christ. Now, setting this trilogy aside, behold the 12 greatest films of all time. Number 12, Goodwill Hunting. See, the sad thing about a guy like you is, in 50 years, you're going to start doing some thinking on your own. And you're going to come up with the fact that there are two certainties in life. One, don't do that. And two, you dropped $150,000 on an education you could have got for $1.50 in late charges at the public library. That wasted education was at Harvard, by the way. Love that line and scene, even though Louis C.K. did a masterful job making fun of it recently. Goodwill Hunting is a masterpiece, and the famous bench scene is one of the greatest scenes ever on film. Will ripped Sean's heart out after analyzing the painting in his office and reminding him that he is one step away from killing himself. Then Sean sits him on a bench and teaches Will some wisdom about life. The most important line, and what I see as the key theme of the film, is when Sean, Robin Williams, says, "You don't know about real loss, because it only occurs when you've loved something more than you love yourself, and I doubt you've ever dared to love anybody that much." This captures the heart of one of C.S. Lewis's beautiful quotes from The Four Loves. He writes, "There is no safe investment, To love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything and your heart will certainly be wrung and possibly be broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give your heart to no one, not even to an animal. Wrap it carefully round with hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. The alternative to tragedy, or at least to the risk of tragedy, is damnation. The only place outside heaven where you can be perfectly safe from all the dangers of love is hell. So many good reasons to watch Goodwill Hunting, but preeminently it will dare you to love someone more than you love yourself. Number 11, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I'm not just talking about my wife, I'm talking about my life. I can't seem to get that through to you. I'm not just talking about one person, I'm talking about everybody. I'm talking about form, I'm talking about content, I'm talking about interrelationships. I'm talking about God, the devil, hell, heaven. Do you understand? Finally? So says Patient Harding at a mental institution where this entire magnificent film takes place. McMurphy, brilliantly played by Jack Nicholson, is sent to this institution to determine if he's crazy. You'll have to watch it and or read the novel it's based on to determine that for yourself. What really moves me every time I watch it is that most everyone in the institution are there voluntarily. They could freely leave their prison any time, but they don't. Some are there because of the devastating aftermath of a divorce. Others stay out of fear of the outside world. Most all of them have issues with their mom or dad, and on and on. It's a great metaphor for life. So many of us live in prisons of our own making, and the door is wide open for us to escape anytime we want to, but we don't. The best scene is when McMurphy, one of the few who are forced to be there, tries to lift this huge sink so he can throw it through the windows and escape. He fails, but before walking away, he says to the other inmates, "I tried, didn't I? At least I did that." I doubt the author of the novel or those behind the film are Christian, but I can't help but see Christ as the one who lifts that sink, hurls it through the prison wall, and breaks us free from all things enslaving us every time I watch this glorious film. Watch it and see how it speaks to you. Number 10, No Country for Old Men. I think if you were Satan and you were sitting around trying to think up something that would just bring the human race to its knees, what you would probably come up with is narcotics. Maybe he did. I told that to somebody at breakfast the other morning, and they asked me if I believed in Satan. I said, well, that ain't the point. And they said, I know, but do you? I had to think about that. I guess as a boy I did. Come the middle years, my belief, I reckon, had waned somewhat. Now I'm starting to lean back the other way. He explains a lot of things that otherwise don't have no explanation. Or not to me, they don't. Spoken by Ed Tom Bell, not in the movie, but this is straight from the novel No Country for Old Men by Cormac McCarthy. This is the tragedy of this film. Even though I rank it one of the greatest films of all time, and it would have been even better if they had used more of the excellent and theologically rich dialogue from the book. Therefore, I strongly recommend reading the book first and then watching the movie. A wonderful experience. One of the best dialogues from the film, and there are so many, is between Ed, Tommy Lee Jones, and his uncle Ellis. Ed says to Ellis, "That man that shot you died in prison." "Angola? Yeah." "What would you have done if he had been released?" "Oh, I don't know, nothing. Wouldn't have been no point in it." "I'm kindly surprised to hear you say that." "Well, all the time you spend trying to get back what's been took from you, more is going out the door." And the scene ends with Ellis saying, "You can't stop what's coming." I see that line as the key theme in both the book and the movie. You can't stop what's coming. Well, what's coming? Evil embodied in Anton Chigurh, old age, death itself, God and the end of the world. This film will remind you that you must face all of it. Ed Tom says in both the book and the film, "I always thought when I got older that God would sort of come into my life in some way. He didn't. I don't blame him. If I was him, I'd have the same opinion about me that he does." Ellis rightly responds, "You don't know what he thinks." But in the book, Ed Tom is a little more optimistic. He says, people complain about the bad things that happen to him, that they don't deserve, but they seldom mention the good, about what they done to deserve them things. I don't recall that I ever give the good Lord all that much cause to smile on me, but he did. Read McCarthy's novel, and then watch the Coen brothers film.
What you got ain't nothing new. This country's hard on people. You can't stop what's coming. It ain't all waiting on you. That's vanity.
Number 9, The Prestige. Sacrifice and ambition are the two words that capture the essence of Christopher Nolan's The Prestige. Someone once said, "Find out the cost of what you want to do in life, and then pay it." These two magicians, masterfully played by Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale, have definitely counted the cost for fame and glory, and they pay for it. Pride goes before destruction. Proverbs 16:18. That should have been shown at the beginning of the film. This is the kind of movie I can't say anything about without ruining it, so I'll only share a brief dialogue from David Bowie's powerhouse performance as the scientist wizard Tesla. Tesla warns Robert, played by Hugh Jackman, "Go home. Forget this thing. I can recognize an obsession. No good will come of it." Robert responds, "Why? Haven't good come of your obsessions?" Tesla says, "Well, at first, but I followed them too long. I'm their slave, and one day they'll choose to destroy me." The Prestige is such an underrated film. It is dark, but excellent, and it will force you to ask yourself, what are your obsessions? What are you willing to sacrifice so much in life for? Number 8, Gladiator. This epic masterpiece was released 24 years ago. I still remember seeing it in the theater, and I've watched it at least every year since. It rightly won the 2000 Academy Award for Best Picture, beloved by critics and popular audiences alike. Of all the historical fiction, epic action films, it is only surpassed by Braveheart. Gladiator inspires honor, sacrifice, faith, brotherhood, love for your family, and the boldness of Christian martyrs, in deleted scenes, unfortunately. It brought the philosopher king Marcus Aurelius, the wicked tyrant Commodus, gladiators, the glory of Rome, and this 1872 painting to life. Early in the film, Emperor Marcus Aurelius says this to Maximus: "I'm dying, Maximus. When a man sees his end, he wants to know there was some purpose to his life. How will the world speak my name in years to come? Will I be known as the philosopher, the warrior, the tyrant?" My ancestor Justin Martyr and other Christians with him were beheaded under Marcus Aurelius' reign. Some try to get Marcus off the hook, since it was his Stoic teacher Rusticus, not Marcus, who officially gave the order. But he was the emperor. The buck stops with him. I think we can answer his question. He is remembered as a tyrant, and the book of Revelation does not speak well to the future of those who beheaded Christians. Always remember what Maximus Decimus Meridius thunders out to his troops in my favorite line of the entire film.
"What we do in life echoes in eternity."
Number 7, The Count of Monte Cristo. This is such a beautiful film. I've read the book, but this is one of those movies that has a life of its own beyond the book. Jim Caviezel, who played Jesus in The Passion of the Christ, gives a phenomenal performance as the young and innocent and betrayed Edmond Dantes. In an interview recently, Jim Caviezel revealed that they tried to take God out of the script, where it says on his prison wall, "God will give me justice." Jim threatened to leave over it, and thankfully they put God back in. Love that he took that stand for what is right and won. In one scene, Edmond Dantes delivers an unforgettable speech to a young man on his 16th birthday. He spoke about him becoming a man, but little did he know that this young man would grow up to be the man of steel.
Life is a storm, my young friend. You will bask in the sunlight one moment, be shattered on the rocks the next. What makes you a man is what you do when that storm comes. You must look into that storm and shout as you did in Rome. Do your worst, for I will do mine. Then the fates will know you as we know you, as Albert Mondego, the man.
Thankfulness, especially to God, is another theme. When Edmund first meets the priest in prison, they have this exchange. The priest says, after seeing through a window in Edmund's cell, "I have not seen the sky these 11 years. Thank you, God." Edmund responds, "There is no talk of God in here, priest." "What about the inscription?" He points to "God will give me justice" on the wall. Edmund, It's faded just as God has faded from my heart. The priest responds, and what has replaced him? And when the priest dies, you find out for the last 14 years, the priest has said thank you every time they served him a meal in that horrid prison. This is one of those soul virtue-building movies to watch with the whole family. Number 6, Tombstone. After a carefully researched study, the Babylon Bee discovered that 100% of men watch all of Tombstone if they see it playing on TV. Tombstone is hands down the greatest Western film ever made. Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven would be a distant second. Kurt Russell does an excellent job playing Wyatt Earp, but Val Kilmer's performance as Doc Holliday is one of the best in cinema. Up there with Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter and Heath Ledger as the Joker.
Why, Johnny Ringo, you look like somebody just walked over your grave.
I could watch the scene with Johnny Ringo and Doc Holliday quoting Latin to each other all day long. In fact, you should look up what they actually said in Latin. This is why you want to learn Latin, not to read the great theologians down through history, but to know what Doc and Ringo were saying to each other. As Doc closes the discussion, evidently Mr. Ringo's an educated man. Now I really hate him. You may not know that it captures what really happened historically, especially the shootout at the OK Corral. Jeff Morey worked as an historical consultant and tried to make the OK Corral scene as historically accurate as possible. The greatest moment that really happened, according to Morey, is near the beginning of the fight when Ike Clanton runs to Wyatt, says he's unarmed and doesn't want to fight anymore. Wyatt responds, "The fight has commenced! Go to fighting or get away!" It's great wisdom for the Christian life and life in general from Wyatt. The fight has commenced, go to fighting or get away. It's also a movie about friendship. Wyatt and Doc show us what it is to be true friends. Doc is sick and really dying, but he's out there fighting with Wyatt. And Turkey Creek Jack Johnson asks him, "Why are you doing this, Doc?" He responds, "Because Wyatt Earp is my friend." Johnson shrugs, "Friend? Heck, I got lots of friends." Doc Holliday says, "I don't." Invite some true friends over and watch the greatest Western film ever made. Number 5, Braveheart. Twitter, now X, is the social media site that I actually enjoy. I've been on it for about 8 years now. Besides some spiritual victories, my favorite moment on Twitter was when I commented on some stupid article that was bashing Braveheart and basically saying that the men who love it are an expression of toxic masculinity. My comment was, any man who does not have Braveheart in their top films of all time will have pronouns in their bio. I kid you not, I received 2 comments from 2 males that said they hated Braveheart, and they both had pronouns in their bios. You can't make this stuff up. Braveheart speaks for itself. Best Picture in 1995 and a whole host of other Academy Awards. If anyone is looking for a picture, meme, or clip to inspire chivalry, bravery, courage, and boldness, 9 times out of 10 it will be from Braveheart. So many great lines and scenes, but this one really hits hard these days when Christianity is declining in America and across the West, and so many Christians are divided amongst themselves. Robert the Bruce says to William, "Now you've achieved more than anyone has ever dreamed, but fighting these odds, it looks like rage, not courage." William Wallace responds, "It's well beyond rage. Help me. In the name of Christ, help yourselves. Now is our chance. Now. If we join, we can win. If we win, well, then we'll have something that none of us had ever had before, a country of our own. Unite us. Unite us. Unite the clans." If only so many lukewarm Christians sitting on the sidelines would stop compromising with the world and get up and fight with us. We could win. And if we win, well then, we would have something we never dreamed. Man up. Watch Braveheart. Number 4, The Dark Knight Trilogy. There are 2 great trilogies that will never be surpassed. The Dark Knight Trilogy and the Lord of the Rings Trilogy. I'm giving Lord of the Rings the slightly better rating here, but talk to me after I've been mesmerized beholding the biography of Nolan's Batman, and I might reverse the order. The first one, Batman Begins, is the most underrated of Nolan's films because many who saw The Dark Knight never went back to this classic character development of the billionaire superhero who just does a lot of push-ups. Bale doesn't even put on the bat suit until over 45 minutes into Batman Begins. 45 minutes! Only Nolan. The Dark Knight is the most entertaining, possibly the greatest action film ever made by itself. But Batman Begins is full of heart and character development. The Dark Knight Rises by itself is a decline from the first 2. But as a conclusion to the trilogy, I don't see how it could have been better. Nolan has said it's inspired and modeled after Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities, where Jesus' statement, "I am the resurrection and the life," is repeated again and again at the climax of the book. The end of Dickens' novel is even quoted at the end of Dark Knight Rises by Commissioner Gordon over Bruce Wayne's grave.
I see a beautiful city and a brilliant people rising from this abyss. I see the lives for which I lay down my life, peaceful, useful, prosperous, and happy. I see that I hold a sanctuary in their hearts and in the hearts of their descendants generations hence. It is a far, far better thing that I do than I have ever done. It is a far, far better rest that I go to than I have ever known.
Alfred, played masterfully by Michael Caine, steals many scenes throughout the trilogy, especially with his repeated question, "Why do we fall, sir?" So we can learn to pick ourselves up again.
What have I done, Alfred? Everything my family, my father built.
The Wayne legacy is more than bricks and mortars.
I wanted to save Gotham. I failed.
Why do we fall, sir? So that we can learn to pick ourselves up.
You still haven't given up on me.
Never.
It's from Alfred we learn some fascinating background of Bruce's family. We know that Bruce Wayne's father built a railway for free transportation in Gotham. He almost went bankrupt combating poverty during the Depression. His death inspired the wealthy to help the poor in Gotham. But Alfred also tells Bruce at one point that what became the Batcave was used by his great-great-grandfather as an underground railroad for slaves during the Civil War. I love that. Hero runs in the family. But that anyone can be a hero, and even in the smallest acts of kindness in life, seems to be the final message of the trilogy, as Batman says to Gordon. A hero can be anyone, even a man doing something as simple and reassuring as putting a coat around a young boy's shoulders to let him know the world hadn't ended. Number 3, the Lord of the Rings trilogy. If you are looking to be baptized for 11 hours in the good, the true, and the beautiful, then watch all 3 Lord of the Rings extended editions in 4K. All 3 Lord of the Rings films were nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards, and The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King won in 2003, and it is tied with Ben-Hur and Titanic for the most Academy Awards wins in history. In fact, only 3 movies have won Best Picture and Best Movie for the MTV Movie Awards, another popular audience metric: Titanic, Gladiator, and Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. It's also important to point out that in the 11-hour Lord of the Rings trilogy, there is not a single bad word. No sex or nudity or even sexual innuendo. No alphabet people representation. It is all full of the great virtues of Greece and Rome: wisdom, prudence, courage, justice, self-control, and the heavenly virtues of Christianity: faith, hope, love. Frodo, Aragorn, and Gandalf filled the trilogy with Christ. As Peter Kreeft writes, Jesus is more clearly present in Gandalf, Frodo, and Aragorn, the 3 Christ figures. First of all 3 undergo different forms of death and resurrection. Second, all 3 are saviors. Third, they exemplify the Old Testament threefold messianic symbolism of prophet, Gandalf, priest, Frodo, and king, Aragorn. 2 lines make me jump up out of my seat every time I hear them. When Gimli says in the Mines of Moria,
Let them come. There is one dwarf yet in Moria who still draws breath.
and when Aragorn says on the steps of Helm's Deep,
There's always hope.
Lastly, I love one of the scenes from The Return of the King Extended Edition, where Pippin sees the Tree of Gondor.
All has turned to vain ambition. He would even use his grief as a cloak. 1,000 years this city has stood. Now, at the whim of a madman, it will fall. And the white tree, the tree of the king, will never bloom again.
Why are they still guarding it?
They guard it because they have hope. A faint and fading hope that one day it will flower. The king will come, and this city will be as it once was, before it fell into decay.
This is imagery from Isaiah 11, where from the stump of Jesse that's been cut down will arise the true king, the son of David, the true heir to the city of God, Jerusalem. Usiliodore's heir is fiction, but praise the Lord, David's heir, our true king, Jesus Christ, has come. Number 2, Fight Club. On a large enough timeline, the survival rate for everyone will drop to 0. This is your life, and it's ending 1 minute at a time. The things you own end up owning you. I don't want to die without any scars. Some wisdom from Tyler Durden. Ever since I was mesmerized sitting in the theater in 1999 viewing Fight Club for the first time, that line still hits me hard. I don't want to die without any scars. Can we really belong to Jesus Christ if we have no scars for him? As Jesus himself said, no servant is greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you also. And as Paul said, everyone who wants to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. From now on, don't let anyone trouble me with these things, for I bear on my body the scars that show I belong to Jesus. I may be the only one, but for some reason, Fight Club moves me more to want to follow, suffer, and die for Jesus than any other movie. I even gave a talk at a bar years ago called Fight Club and the Gospel of Jesus Christ, trying to explain why. This is the only one of my top 12 that I don't warmly recommend everyone to watch. For one, I think many will not take away from it what I take away from it. I know that from experience, because I've recommended it to many people, and they don't see what I see. And second, it really is full of a lot of evil and mire. That is probably not good to pollute your soul with. But since it has had such a profound and positive effect on me now for 25 years, I have to commend it, but with that warning. In my favorite scene, Tyler takes a convenience store clerk behind his store and puts a gun to his head and tells him he's going to die. His name is Raymond K. Hessel, and he begs Tyler for his life. Tyler asks him, "What did you want to do with your life? What did you want to be, Raymond K. Hessel?" Raymond answers he wants to be a veterinarian. Tyler lets him go, but he tells him if in 6 months he is not on his way to becoming a veterinarian, he will kill him. As Raymond runs away, Tyler says this, "Tomorrow will be the most beautiful day of Raymond K. Hessel's life. His breakfast will taste better than any meal you and I have ever tasted." This is the hope I think Fincher and the author of the book wants from their audiences of Raymond K. Hessel's. To look at their life through the barrel of a gun, with death seconds away, and then be given a second chance. What did you want to do with your life? What did you want to be? The first step to finding out is watching Fight Club. You may have a near-life experience.
We just had a near-life experience.
Number 1, The Shashank Redemption. I have no idea to this day what those 2 Italian ladies were singing about. Truth is, I don't want to know. Some things are best left unsaid. I'd like to think they were singing about something so beautiful. It can't be expressed in words and makes your heart ache because of it. I tell you, those voices soared higher and farther than anybody in a great place dares to dream. It was like some beautiful bird flapped into our drab little cage and made those walls dissolve away. And for the briefest of moments, every last man in Shawshank felt free. As I said before, the International Movie Database's top 250 films, rated by almost 100 million users, agrees with me. The Shawshank Redemption is number 1. It is the greatest movie ever made. In my opinion, 1994 was the best year for movies. 3 of the Best Picture nominees alone were The Shawshank Redemption, Pulp Fiction, and Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump won. I love Forrest Gump, but it's nowhere near Shawshank. As Paul wrote to the Philippians, "Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you." The Shawshank Redemption is truly what is excellent, Eritas, and you should think and meditate on such films. Like great music, excellent films penetrate our subconscious, bypassing our reason and conscious awareness. That's the beauty of music. They can't get that from you. Haven't you ever felt that way about music? Ask Andy. Red responds, I played a mean harmonica as a younger man. Lost interest in it, though. Didn't make much sense in here. Andy says, here's where it makes the most sense. You need it so you don't forget. Forget? Forget that there are places in this world that aren't made out of stone, that there's something inside that they can't get to, that they can't touch. That's yours. Red, exasperated, says, what are you talking about? Hope, Andy says. After 3 decades, why is this movie still loved by virtually everyone who sees it? Within the very title, we find one of the greatest words in the English language, redemption. Not just the redemption of Andy Dufresne as he escapes to freedom, but the redemption of Tommy, who learns to read, and Red, who learns what it means to hope. Maybe it's that all of us long within this prison of life for someone like Andy to enter into our world, innocent, calm, wise, and a forerunner to guide us to a warm place that has no memory. And even if we can't escape just like Andy or Red, he taught us to hope.
Remember, Red, hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies. I will be hoping that this letter finds you, and finds you well. Your friend, Andy.
As a result, even if for the briefest of moments, every last man and woman who enters the cinematic world of Shawshank feels free. G.K. Chesterton, writing about Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, said that it's obvious that Scrooge is redeemed, but the ultimate question of the story is, are you redeemed? I think it's the same with the Shawshank Redemption. Andy and Red are redeemed in the end, but the ultimate question to walk away with is, are you redeemed?